You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I am Kirk Mona, and I am joined today by Rachel Ginza and Victoria Thompson. We are all professional naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. It's Kirk, Victoria. It's our last episode of our third year.
That's
I know,
right.
this is amazing. Now, if you're looking at the calendar going, it's not December, what are they talking about? Our podcast started in March.
Yes.
Mhm.
So our podcast year goes until March. So this is, the last episode of the third year of the show. It's been an amazing ride.
Yeah.
It
and
sure has.
next week, we have our lovely guest.
Oh my, I am
It's
so excited.
it's going to be great.
It's going to be so fun.
For those of you who don't
Yeah.
know, when we kick off a new season, we have on another naturalist that we know, Brett Sieberer comes on, and some of you know him from being
He
on
does
the
a
show.
hostile takeover.
He does an amazing job asking us. It's sort of a hostile takeover. Not that we let him do it, but it's hostile, and that some of the questions get pretty challenging. And he asks us all kinds of questions about kind of quizzing us about stuff that was on the show, quizzing our naturalist knowledge, and of course, playing everyone's favorite game, Eat, Ride, Jacket.
Horrible.
Which, if you don't know what it is, you're going to have to come next week to find out. It's amazing.
It's so fun.
And maybe a little
Tragic.
controversial. Okay. But we're not there yet.
No, we aren't.
We're not
We
there
have
yet.
a jam-packed
We
episode.
got one
I'm
more
sure.
show.
Okay.
What do you have, Rachel, for our final show of the year here?
Well, it's come to my attention somewhat recently, and this happens to us as naturalists, as well as being podcasters of the strange and the weird, that not everybody knows what about my topic, and I thought everyone knew about my topic. It's one of those,
Oh, okay.
which
Okay.
happens.
Yeah.
So, little background is I was helping out a fellow naturalist at my workplace somewhat recently in the last week or so, and helping them get ready to teach planetarium. I was mainly going in to make sure that the planetarium blew up properly because it's an inflatable planetarium, and making
Right.
sure the electronic display that we have on the inside was working correctly. And they had never
Mhm.
taught that class in particular before, so I was touching
Oh,
base
good,
with
okay.
them and just, hey,
Sure.
you have all the facts that you need. Do you have any stories or questions or anything like that?
Yeah.
And I was just laying on the floor as they were working and getting ready for their class, and I was looking up at the stars because the display was going, so we could see all the different
lovely.
stars, and I was just looking at it. And I proceeded to share some different knowledge about space that I've learned through this podcast, through just hanging out with Kirk, things that I just randomly know.
It's infectious, yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And so I shared some stuff that they didn't know about, which is because they don't know a lot about space. And
Okay.
because we tend to focus really on Earth and the interactions in the space that we inhabit, right?
Mhm.
So we talked a bit about how comets smell like cat urine, which you've talked
Yeah.
about.
Lovely. Cat. Well, so careful. It's not just cat urine.
No.
Cat urine and vomit.
Exactly.
Yes.
No, cat urine and
Together.
farts. Cat urine and farts. Is what it was. It was urine and farts together. Is what
Mhm.
comets smell like.
Gross. And that,
Awful.
and I talked with them about the brightest stars that we can see from the
Yeah.
planet Earth, as well as how the light from stars is really us looking into the astrologic past, because the light is
Yes.
from the past because it takes so long. It takes years, hence the term light years, to get to us.
Yep.
Which they're like, whoa, that's wild. And then we also started talking a little bit about black holes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
y'all remember the big news a few years back, how there was that first ever picture of a black hole, right? It wasn't
Yeah,
like
it's,
a true picture.
Sagittarius A star.
Yeah, it wasn't like a like a light image in the way that we think of images
Yeah.
Right.
truly, but it was still like the first picture of a black hole, which is really cool. And actually on that note,
it was radio waves that have been converted into light.
Yes.
exactly. And actually, in 2020, I don't know if y'all knew this, the Nobel Prize actually went to the discovery of the fact that there is a supermassive black hole in the center of the Milky Way. Like the astronomers
Yes.
were able to prove that there is one in the center of the Milky Way. We didn't know that before 2020.
Well,
which
they
is really
since
cool.
now have imaged that. There's an image of that out there.
Exactly. So cool. So I'm kind of talking about black holes today.
Okay.
But
All
a
right.
specific thing. But I want to give a little bit of background of what black holes are for those who maybe don't know what a black hole is.
Sure.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So black holes, for those who don't, is one of the ways stars die.
Sure.
In
Yes.
the simplest of terms, right?
Yeah,
In
that's good.
essence, like stars, generally they'll either explode or they'll implode. If they explode, they go
Sure, yeah.
supernova, and sometimes the explosion is so big that it can condense then into a really, really tight part of space-time.
Well, what happens is when you have a supernova, it actually the star is expanding out and getting bigger and bigger, like turning into like a red giant and
Mhm.
swelling as it's running out of fuel, and then it collapses very quickly, and it will actually kind of rebound and bounce off this like hard core,
Mhm.
like as it's kind of coming in super fast and collapsing, it will kind of literally kind of boing and like shoot back out, and that's what the supernova is that rapid collapse and then explosion. Whereas if there's enough mass, when it gets to that critical point, instead of bouncing back out, it just keeps on collapsing
Right.
and doesn't ever spring back out.
Exactly. So
I like how the way you said it. Some stars will sort of explode out.
Mhm.
Some can no longer support the pressure to keep the size they are, and they will collapse in on themselves. And those are the ones that we tend to think of as turning into black holes. Yeah.
Exactly, because they just condense into a little tiny spot. And so it's all the mass of this huge star in one little spot. And it's a part of space that it's just so dense with so much matter that it just starts pulling everything into it. It has its
From
own
its
gravity
massive
that
gravity.
is so dense and so strong that you just can't escape after you reach a certain point or however close you are to that space.
Mhm.
And that's called the event horizon.
Right.
The gravity,
One of the really weird things about them, though, like
Yeah.
you said, they pull things in,
including
not
light.
any more than not any more than the original star would have,
Right.
in a weird way, because they don't gain any mass.
Mm-hmm.
So like the black hole itself doesn't have more mass than the star they started out as.
Mm-hmm.
So like if our sun was replaced by a black hole, the same mass as the sun, our orbit would stay the same. We would
Exactly.
not be magically like sucked into it. It's just a bunch of mass. It's just that it's in a smaller, tighter package,
Exactly.
right?
And the gravity is just
Yeah.
so strong that nothing can escape it, including light. So it just pulls.
When you get close to it, yeah,
right. When
yeah.
you get too close, when you cross that event horizon, even light
Exactly.
can't escape. But yeah, you were correct.
Which is
Like
wild.
if our sun turned into a black hole, we would still orbit it. We would just be very, very cold.
Yeah, it'd be real dark and real cold. It wouldn't be a good situation.
It would be bad. We would notice, what is it, like 12 minutes?
8 minutes.
8
If our
minutes?
sun disappeared, it takes 8 minutes for the sunlight to get here. Yeah,
All right, cool. Literally.
you got 8 minutes. Go.
So once you cross that event horizon, this is all background information. I'm not actually talking about black
Okay.
holes. In essence, black holes are wild in the first place because like you get supermassive black holes, which are a bunch of black holes that have combined together somehow, and it gets really complicated really quickly. And we're still learning so much about black holes. But I wanted to talk about what happens when an object does cross that event horizon. This is
okay, cool.
Oh, okay.
truly, like, this is theoretical because we can't technically
This
test
is what
it.
the math tells us happens.
Exactly.
Yeah,
we can't test
nobody's
this.
done this experimentally.
Yeah, because like I said, light doesn't escape from a black hole, but what does happen is fascinating. So when an object gets like too close, like past that event horizon line, it starts to experience like tidal forces. So like what happens is the gravitational pull starts distorting the object and pulling it towards like the center. And because of that, it starts to elongate it. So one side will create or have experience like really strong gravity and start pulling it, but it not technically ever pulling it apart. Okay, eventually becomes like this line of atoms. Like you just become thinner and thinner and thinner. And what this is called,
the gravity is differential is so, like say you're going feet first, would be so different between your feet and your head that you just start to get stretched out.
Yeah. And truly, they thought about this name so well, and I love it very much because it's called spaghettification, or the noodle effect.
Yep.
I had not heard that before. Okay.
Oh yeah, it's one of those
it's
times
called
when you just go,
spaghettification.
someone got the name of this one right.
They thought about it because what happens is like you cross over and you just get stretched and stretched until you become like a string of spaghetti. And it just looks like it's squeezed and you just become like this little funnel. Instead of like truly like tearing you apart, eventually you just become this string of atoms that is stretched from the event horizon towards the center of this black hole. And it just flattens you out like a pancake. It's so fun. Horrifying, but cool.
Smeared across space.
Yes. But that is what I wanted to talk about. I mainly, like, there's not a lot about spaghettification because, again, it's theoretical. Stephen Hawking was the person who came up with it in the first place. Or, like, he described it in A Brief History of Time. The idea of spaghettification, which is really fascinating. What would happen like mathematically, because again, it is not ethical or possible to send someone into a black hole and then receive messages from the black hole to find out what is happening to the object or the person in that black hole.
Yeah, information, no form of information of any kind can cross the event horizon.
And then come back.
I think when I was a kid, I thought like once you cross the event horizon, that was like, that's when all the excitement started. But really, for the person who was doing it, you would have no way to know that you would cross the event horizon.
No,
you would not feel any different. Like it's just an arbitrary point in space where it would take more energy to turn around than exists.
Exactly.
Right.
You would just like
the real bad stuff wouldn't happen until you got a lot closer than the event horizon.
You wouldn't notice until it just.
Till it's too late.
Probably be pretty,
too late.
Probably be
like,
pretty
well,
quick though. You know.
I hope so.
Well, I mean, it depends actually. I think whether you are heading like straight for it or whether you're coming in at an angle, because there definitely are these accretion disks of gases that are swirling around black holes. That's actually what we're seeing when those images.
Exactly.
Is these disks of gases that are being accelerated to incredible, like near the speed of light. These particles are being accelerated because it's some of them, if they're assuming they're not light already, like some of these gases and whatnot, they are being accelerated incredibly fast, and they're just orbiting around the black hole, and they may never cross that event horizon.
Exactly.
They may just keep on swirling around. So it would kind of depend if you were going straight at it or coming from an angle. Coming from an angle, you might be in for one heck of a ride.
Yeah. And like in all technicality speaking too, like the tidal forces of a black hole, depending on whatever size of black hole, like the tidal forces will kill a human before you even reach the event horizon, just because of how fast you would be orbiting and everything. Like it would just
interesting. Yeah.
It would be too much for an astronaut, for a human body to be able to experience, right? So like we would be dead before that, so we couldn't even figure out. We wouldn't be able to send back any information anyway, even if we were able to distribute information from one side of a black hole to another. But I love the term spaghettification and the fact that you eventually just become this thin line of atoms circling and going into this black hole. Fascinating and absolutely wild. So that's what I had for us this week with spaghettification.
It is fascinating, and it makes me content to keep very far away from black holes.
Oh, absolutely. I don't want to go anywhere near. I'm good.
I'll be the contrarian then and say I would love to go near a black hole.
Beautiful.
Just close enough to get like a good view of what's going on. It's got to be one of the most amazing spectacles in the entire universe.
I mean, that's fair.
True.
So that being said, that's all I have for you this week. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, it'll be Victoria.
All right.
In a world where the tiniest elements make the biggest impact, where curiosity leads to groundbreaking discoveries, it's time to delve deeper than ever before. Welcome to Under the Microscope, the podcast that zooms into the captivating world of materials and nanoscience. With each episode, you meet a scientist working in the field of materials or nanoscience. On Under the Microscope, the scientist candidly talks about their career journey, their favorite research experiment, and their 3 wishes to improve the world. Check out Under the Microscope on your favorite podcast app.
Hey everybody, we're back. Today, friends, I want to talk about earwax.
Are you...
Jeez. Okay. Let's do it.
Yeah, it's
I already
medically...
hate looking for the images for this for our social media.
Awesome.
Oh,
You're welcome.
God.
No, it gets better. There's something at the end that you'll be able to latch onto, I think.
Oh, no.
Yes. Just medically, earwax is known as cerumen.
Mm-hmm.
Just so you know. So if you're looking for scientific type articles about earwax, that's your term.
Good to
that
know.
You want. But I think it's pretty easy to get fairly far into your adulthood and not know much about earwax because hardly anybody talks about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
At least in American culture, there's kind of a general disgust about most stuff that comes out of your body. But I would say there is a scale, which informally I would characterize as going from sort of poop and vomit on the most disgusting end to, then maybe like mucus, urine, earwax, saliva, and tears. Tears and breast milk kind of being on the least disgusting end. Would you generally agree with my characterization?
Yeah.
I think pus
So,
is
like,
worse
earwax-
than vomit and poop, personally. But
Really?
yeah, I don't like the idea of pus. Ugh.
Okay.
It's not good. It's not great.
It
I'll
doesn't
give you
bode
that.
Yeah.
well. When pus is created,
Especially when
true.
it's chunky.
that doesn't bode well. Something is wrong.
Yeah, pus is pretty bad. It's true.
Anyway.
With your own earwax, I would say for most people, it's probably not that gross. Other people's kind of gross.
Yeah, you don't want to see that.
But not as bad as some other things. And, I did not know this until I was at least in my 20s. But there are 2 main types of human earwax. I don't know if you knew this. There's
What?
wet and dry. Yeah.
Ooh, I just learned about this because I just got my 23andMe, not a sponsor. And they're like, you're more predisposed to have wet earwax. I'm like, that's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Well,
There we
as
go.
you allude to, it is genetic. It's controlled by a single gene mutation. The gene for dry earwax is recessive.
Huh.
And this varies by human population, which is predominant. So in East Asia, the dry earwax is more common, significantly more common.
Okay.
And in Europe, and especially in Africa, the wet earwax gene is much more common.
All right.
Okay.
And I think also North America has dry earwax gene, I think, because the population there is, I mean, we're talking about Native Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right, yeah.
I followed you.
Yeah.
Good
So-
clarification.
I actually, in spite of being of exclusively European heritage, as far as I'm aware, I have the dry kind. So therefore, both my parents also did or do.
Interesting.
And so just to give a little description, dry earwax is usually tan or gray, maybe light yellow, flaky, kind of brittle. Wet earwax is light to dark brown or maybe even orangish and quite sticky. So,
Yeah.
listeners, you probably know which kind you have. There's not a ton of accessible research on earwax out there, but a lot of it that has come out is from Japan.
There's an opportunity here for some some research. Yeah.
Okay, but researchers in Japan have done some stuff that they found an association between having wet type earwax and stronger body odor from your armpits.
Interesting.
And
Now
also
I'm gonna
possibly
smell
with,
my armpits more.
Rachel is kind of stinky, so that makes
Yeah.
sense.
That's fair. I guess.
and there's also possibly an association with increased risk of breast cancer, but also
Great.
better colostrum production. Colostrum is like the very first milk that comes in after a baby's born.
Okay, so hold on. So having the wet
Yes.
earwax is associated with a higher risk. Okay.
Yeah, and the colostrum and the smelliness. So why would that be? Well, it actually does make some sense because we actually have two main different types of sweat glands in the body.
Okay.
Eccrine sweat glands are the kind that basically just put out salty water.
Right.
But then apocrine sweat glands put out the kind of oily stuff that comes out on our body.
Sure,
So
yeah.
it's fats and proteins. And that is the stuff that the bacteria eat that makes us smell. And
Sure.
so those sweat glands are an adapted kind of those sweat glands are what produce earwax. And also an adapted kind of that sweat gland is what produces breast milk. So they're
Exactly,
all
yep.
related. And it's
Okay.
actually pretty well known that people of East Asian origin tend to have less body odor. And, on average than people of European or African origin. And so it seems that
Okay.
the earwax gene may be partly responsible, although there are other
Sure.
things
If you're
like,
if you're not producing as much of that oil,
Yeah.
then the bacteria doesn't have anything to eat, and it's not the bacteria what causes the smell, like you said. So that'll make sense.
It does.
yeah, and there are other things like diet and microbiome of your skin that are going to affect
Sure,
that.
sure.
But, the gene does seem to have something to do with it. Why do we have earwax, though?
Yeah,
there's not,
I'm curious.
as I said, there's not like
No.
a ton of stuff out there, but generally scientists believe it has two purposes. One is to clean and protect the ears from dust and other foreign material and to get rid of
I've heard that. Yeah.
dead skin cells from your ear canal.
Right.
So as you move your jaw by eating and talking, the earwax slowly will work its way out of your ears, sort of like a conveyor belt.
Uh-huh.
And earwax also, it's been confirmed fairly recently, does have some antimicrobial properties. So it's kind of a defense system. Yeah. There are bacteria in earwax, but they're commensals. They're harmless skin microbiomes that, they're just there like on your skin. But it does have some factors that work against pathogenic bacteria that can be harmful. And it seems like it is probably produced by all mammals, although this information is very hard to determine on the internet, at least.
Yeah, are we swabbing
Interesting.
everybody's ears?
I mean,
We
if
need
you
to
have
start, I guess.
if you have a dog or a cat, you know that they have earwax.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's
There
gross.
is there's one animal for which earwax has become a major tool for research.
Ooh.
Yeah. Whales.
What?
Mm.
Whales.
I feel like I've heard this before. Yeah.
Yeah, whales develop earwax plugs over their entire lifetimes. It just stays in there, and they can become quite large. There was a blue whale that was struck and killed by a ship that had a 10-inch or 25-centimeter plug of earwax.
You could make a
That's
candle.
a lot of earwax. You certainly
you could.
Gross.
Earwax candle.
Shrek was
When
right.
these are studied after the whale dies, they can be used to find out information about the whale. For example, they can be used similar to tree rings to determine the whale's age. They have a seasonal diet that affects the color of the wax deposited.
Horrifying.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and they also collect evidence of things that are going on in the whale's body at different times. For example, the stress hormone cortisol shows up in earwax, so it can tell us how stressed the whale was at different points in its life.
Huh.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it also can tell us how much the whale was exposed to certain pollutants, pesticides, mercury, flame retardants.
Plastic.
And
makes sense.
They found, looking at historical samples of these plugs, that cortisol levels from the height of the age of whaling are higher than from when whaling had stopped. And then
That makes sense.
higher cortisol levels, again, recently, which can be correlated with ocean temperature rising.
Sure.
And of course, there are other factors that can be stressful to whales in modern times, such as a lot of the underwater noise from our shipping and stuff.
Right.
But I just thought it was so fascinating that earwax can be this amazing tool for insight into the lives of whales and the state of our oceans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's wild.
That is very cool. I mean, you think of earwax as just this sort of like, it's earwax, it's nothing, but turns out it's not so nothing.
Yeah, I still very much am like, don't love it. Because like I mentioned, I have the wet earwax. Man, our listeners are getting to know me little too well.
A little bit too well?
Anyway, it grosses me out after a little. If I think about it too much, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
But I guess it does something.
We don't think about it too hard.
Yeah. My sources this week included the UK Natural History Museum, The Atlantic, the website of Professor John H. MacDonald of the University of Delaware, and Wikipedia.
Excellent. Thank you.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, it will be Kirk.
It is winter here in the Northland, but I have been dreaming of summer. And summer has a lot of really good things that I enjoy, but I do have to admit, I haven't had any ticks, mosquito bites, wasp stings, or anything of the sort for many months, and I've been much less itchy in general, being that it's winter, not summer. There's one particular plant that I always teach my summer campers to watch out for, and it's not poison ivy, because we just don't see it that commonly. Mm-hmm. It's stinging nettle.
Oh, yeah.
And they usually think I'm saying stinging nettle. So I have to clearly say that it's nettle, Nettle.
Yep.
And there's a bunch of nettles around the world, so lots of our listeners are probably familiar with them. The main one we have here where we live is stinging nettle. I like to show it to kids, and then I'll explain all about it, and then I'll grab a leaf, and they're like, oh, and then I'll eat the leaf, and they're like, oh my gosh. But it drives home the important message that it's not the leaves that sting you. They're actually edible. It's the stems. The little parts that can irritate you is on the stem.
Right.
Now, that is not true about the plant I am talking about today. And I can't believe it's taken me this long.
We keep having
3 years into the show to get to this plant. Ladies and gentlemen, dear listeners, let's talk about the Gympie-Gympie.
Gympie-Gympie?
What on earth is that?
Either of you heard of this plant?
No.
Awesome.
What?
So the Gympie-Gympie hails from Australia,
of course,
is where it's mostly known for, right? So also Indonesia, Malaysia, some other places. Like I said, 8% of our listeners are from Australia, so shout out to our Australian listeners. Some of them, a lot of them, if they're interested in this kind of thing, probably already have an idea of what I'm about to discuss. But I will say, if you're one of our Australian listeners and you've had a run-in with the Gympie-Gympie, please write us at contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com and let us know what it was like, because you're about to find out a bit here on the show. Now, probably luckily, it is not found everywhere in Australia. These
Excellent.
days, it's restricted to coastal rainforests, mostly in Queensland. So a lot of people won't have the opportunity to come into contact with this in their daily life. It does like to grow alongside roads and disturbed areas, though. So unfortunately, humans do sometimes come into contact with this plant. To be clear, though, you definitely do not want to come into contact with this plant. The Gympie-Gympie is, without a doubt, the most painful, stinging plant on Earth. It has an incredible defense mechanism that will be familiar to anyone who has
Awful.
encountered nettles, as the Gympie-Gympie is the most potent nettle on Earth. So we'll get to that in a second, but I'll just tell you a little background stuff first. This is a plant that usually grows about 3 meters in height, but it can reach up to 10 meters in height. So they can get quite tall, much higher than the little rinky-dink stuff we
10
get
meters?
here where we live.
How many Rachels
Yeah, 10
is that?
meters. A bunch.
That's
That's a
so
lot of
many.
So, I mean, it's like over 5 Rachels, between 5 and 6 Rachels.
Oh my god.
So it's real big. The scientific name, I'll try to get this right, it's Dendrocinide moroides, with moroides meaning mulberry-like. And I guess someone, okay, I won't say someone, let's name names. I know who it was. It was Weddell of the Weddell Sea fame.
Weddell.
He classified the plant, and I guess he thought the leaves looked kind of like mulberry leaves. Hard disagree on that. I'm not sure what he was thinking. They are
Maybe it's
large,
changed a little
kind of
bit.
heart-shaped to me. They look a lot like basswood or linden leaves, if you know what those trees happen to look like.
Yeah.
But those are delightful. These are not. So
And this is
I'm going to assume that many of our listeners have gotten into nettles at some point in their life. If you're an outdoors person, you get these little bumps on your skin and they itch. And
For like
for the
20
recent ones
minutes.
around here, yeah, I would describe it as more annoying than painful, right? It's maybe like a bunch of mosquito bites, but the sensation fades pretty quick. Like you said, maybe
It's
20
more
minutes.
prickly than itchy, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it can itch. I mean, I think it itches. A lot of kids say it itches, but it doesn't itch as long as a mosquito bite. Yeah. And I've had kids get into them in summer camp, and often if it was like in the morning, that sensation is totally gone by the afternoon.
Oh, yeah.
They're forgetting about it. A quick splash of cold water, and it kind of helps wash it away. If you ignore it, do something else fun, people tend to forget that it even happened, right? The same can absolutely not be said of the Gympie-Gympie.
Oh.
First off, unlike many other nettles that I'm more familiar with, these stingers are on the leaves. So even just a gentle brush with the plant can get you into trouble.
Terrible.
The leaves are covered in tiny hairs called trichomes, and these are what are found on all the nettles. These are essentially mini hypodermic needles that actually break off in your skin, and then they have a little hollow tip, and they immediately start to inject an irritant into you. Yeah. The pain
Kirk, I hate
experienced
this.
is said to be like nothing else on earth. Oh, good. The effect is immediate and is both, get this, both an intense burning, but also an intense stinging at the same time. And
No, thank
unlike the
you.
nettles I'm familiar
I hate
with, I
that.
mentioned like having kid put some like cold water on their leg or something they got on there. Adding water to the stings of the Gympie-Gympie makes it worse.
Oh,
Having water
Makes it
poured onto the affected
Why?
area is said to feel like someone pouring fire onto your skin.
awful.
So not surprisingly, having water on it is
absolutely not.
unbearable. Even rain, it will hurt. So the effect does not quickly fade like stinging nettle. It actually intensifies over the course of about 30 minutes.
Oh,
It just keeps on getting worse and building and
Kirk.
building and building. Because your body is under attack, even your lymph nodes can start to swell and become painful because they're swollen. And even if the sting is on like a distant part of your body, this can happen. If you're curious about this, I actually watched a video by Coyote Peterson. And some listeners may be familiar with him.
Oh, I love Coyote
He's been going around the
Peterson.
world purposely letting himself get stung. Yeah, letting himself get stung by like as much or as many things as possible so he can document what these experiences are like so we don't have to. His YouTube channel, by the way, is called Brave Wilderness. So you can watch him touch a leaf to his bare arm and then discuss how it feels. And I got to say, from watching it, it seems real bad. He actually described the pain from being, brushing up against this plant as being worse than being stung by a bullet ant.
Oh, no.
And many people believe that the bullet ant is the worst sting in the world. It can leave you sweating profusely, unable to talk through the pain, and just rolling around on the ground. He said this is even worse. At one point, the pain, I know when he did it was so intense, he felt like he was going to throw up just from the pain.
Oh my
God.
god.
And this is just sort of a little like brush on his arm, just like that. So interestingly, he said the only experience that was worse was when he stuck his hand into a box full of yellow jackets and let them sting his hand like repeatedly. So one yellow jacket sting isn't as bad, but having dozens of them
This person
sting
is
you repeatedly
insane.
is worse. Well, these are the questions people want to know, Victoria, but I don't disagree. So it is at this point, I should point out that one of the common names of this plant is the suicide plant. And the reason why is, Coyote only brushed one leaf on a little bit of his forearm, but imagine if you were to fall into a plant and get these trichomes on your face, your neck, your arms, your chest. Maybe you're working in shorts and that's all you have on, and you stumble into this plant and you just get hit everywhere. You would basically have searing, screaming pain all over your entire body. And it's called the suicide plant, as reportedly some people have been so badly stung they literally have suicidal thoughts because they simply cannot escape the intense pain of running into this plant. Now, one little detail I didn't mention is that unlike the stinging nettle that I'm used to, that isn't very bad to start with and fades away just completely fairly quickly, the pain of the Gympie-Gympie plant, I said it would intensify for that first half hour, but the pain can last for days, weeks, months, and even years.
No.
Yes. Now, that's not necessarily continue, not at that high level, but a level of pain can continue. I found a quote online from a conservation officer with Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service who got hit in the face and the chest with the plant. So kind of probably a similar situation to what I was talking about. Probably, working like with his shirt off or something in the forest and got hit. Here's the quote. For 2 or 3 days, the pain was almost unbearable. I couldn't work or sleep. I remember it feeling like there were giant hands trying to squash my chest. Then it was pretty bad pain for another fortnight or so. The stinging persisted for 2 years.
2 years.
And reoccurred every time I had a cold shower. There is nothing to rival it. It's 10 times worse than anything else. That was his quote.
My jaw is on the floor.
Part of the reason the pain persists is that the trichomes that break off can actually remain in your skin and are very difficult to get out as they kind of will burrow in. And so because they're in there for a very long time, that is what is causing the continued irritation and pain. Also horrifying, the trichomes can very easily become detached and airborne and breathed in by people who just happen to be near the plant.
That's awful.
Trichomes on dead leaves can still sting you, and people have even been stung by decades-old leaves in herbarium collections and museums.
Wow.
Everything about this is just awful, if you haven't noticed. I will say the toxin, interesting, was only recently found and understood for a long time. We're like, what actually causes the pain? Like, is it just a physical thing? Is there some sort of toxin? Or we knew there was probably some sort of liquid in there, but didn't know, like, okay, what in there is doing this? It now has been, I guess the later has a name. They're called Gympie-tides, which I think is a pretty funny name.
That's good.
But it's actually, we've discovered that this particular compound is actually very closely related to the painful venom of cone snails, which we've also talked about on the show.
Okay. Makes sense. Still
Probably
awful.
explains why it's so painful. So that's it, you guys. The Gympie-Gympie.
Is there...
Please know your plants.
Please.
I guess if you're out in the rainforest in Australia, don't touch it. If you see some big heart-shaped leaves, whatever you do, just stay away. Certainly don't use them as toilet paper. That's always been like a urban legend. Some people have accidentally used them as toilet paper, but from what I've understood, if you were to just even grab the leaf, there's no way it's getting anywhere near another part of your body because the pain comes on that quickly.
Well, is there
you absolutely don't want to
any-
mess with this plant, though.
Is there no treatment or anything for this?
So you want to try to get the trichomes out. There's been a number of things. Like traditionally, people would put different kinds of either some even just mud, but also different waxes from plants and resins, and then try to peel those off to pull it out. I did see actually when Coyote Peterson was trying to do it,
the world's
he went to the
worst,
store and bought he bought
skin
wax strips.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he bought a skin wax kit for waxing your legs and stuff, and he put that on, spread on his arm, and then was would rip it off, which of course hurt terribly. But it was just he knew he had to get those trichomes out. So there's some things like that you can try, but once from what I understood from what I was reading is if they break off and they're sitting proud above the skin, you can get them that way. But if they break off and then sort of your skin sort of pulls them in and they become under the skin, you can't get them out. They're in your skin and they're microscopic. So it's just it's horrible. I will say, aside from the stuff I mentioned when I was talking about it, additional sources this week was Australian Geographic and Wikipedia. But stay away from the Gympie-Gympie, folks.
Yeah, makes me not ever want to go to Queensland.
Well, just, don't roll around in plants you don't know what they are. That's good advice.
Yeah,
pretty much
it is
everywhere.
Good advice.
Awesome. Well,
Great.
hey, we'll see everybody next week.
Thanks
Thanks for
Kurt.
being here. And
Thank you.
stop by next week for our amazing... let's see what we're going to call it this year. Sort of our beginning of the new year spectacular with Brett Sieberer, who's going to ask us all kinds of strange questions. I'm so
Can't
excited
wait.
to see what happens.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
Probably going to have us play Eat, Ride, Jacket.
Oh, 100%.
We'll find out.
Yes.
All right. Thanks everyone for
goodbye.
listening.
Bye.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all of our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach out to us on social media by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can also check out our website, which is strangebynaturepodcast.com. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.